So 2023 has been one of the most interesting, eventful years, both in boxing and MMA. So just talking about boxing at this point in time, I think boxing has had like several, like more than several high profile fights that we boxing fans have always wanted to see that have happened. So just to put it into perspective, the thing I think that's really, um, actually trailblazed and made this happen was the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight. The Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight, I think it hit more than 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. And since that fight happened, obviously that had a lot to do with Ryan Garcia's massive social media following and pull. I mean, I think he's huge in America at this point in time. Like he does have a huge following. And since that fight happened, obviously Ryan Garcia lost the fight. But since that fight happened, I think boxing broadcasters saw the massive numbers that he did, and it just literally made them think that we need to stop protecting our fighters and we need to make big fights happen, because if big fights happen, we can get big numbers, and if we get big numbers, we can make some money. So that fight, I think, started it. When they saw the huge pay-per-view numbers that came through and the huge gate that came through for that one fight, I think that started a bit of a upward trend of good fights happening in boxing. So the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight was a massive breakthrough success. I think it's a top 10 pound for pound, not pound for pound. That's a top 10 pay-per-view numbers of all time. That fight, top 10. I don't think it's top 5. It's not reached that level, but it was definitely top 10. And since them numbers came through, I think they were like, you know what, let's start making some big fights happen. And obviously that's what happened. After the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight happened, afterwards, we had Devin Haney versus Lomachenko. That was another great fight. Obviously the decision was contentious. I thought that Lomachenko won that fight, but Devin Haney, as he's a young fighter coming up, for him to actually get a big win over the likes of a Lomachenko, I mean, it's done wonders for his career, and obviously is added a bit of credibility to his career. So, in my opinion, obviously that was a big win for boxing. Another big fight that we had happen was, I believe it was Teofimo Lopez versus Josh Taylor. Now, this wasn't a big fight in terms of pay-per-view numbers, but the fact that Teofimo Lopez was able to get a win over Josh Taylor, and it was a big win as well. I mean, he looked good in there. This reinvigorated his career. Obviously, afterwards, he went into a bit of a hiatus and he said he was going to retire. But thankfully, I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to come back soon, hopefully. So that's another big fight that's actually happened. Obviously, we saw Usyk versus Dubois. Obviously, a bit of a contentious ending, controversial with a low blow, but at least that fight actually happened. So we saw Dubois, we saw Usyk back into the ring, and obviously he got a bit of activity going, because for a long time he was inactive. For whatever reason, he was inactive, but the fact that we got a bit of activity going, next year, hopefully we can see him fight Tyson Fury. Talking about Tyson Fury fought Francis Ngannou. Now, before this fight, it was seen as a total nothing fight. They saw this fight as completely pathetic. They thought, look at this UFC, ex-UFC champion going in there against one of the greatest heavyweights of his era, Tyson Fury. Is going to be a complete whitewash. But little did we know that fight was going to be impressive, and we saw Francis Ngannou, in my opinion, beat up Tyson Fury, knock him down, and in my opinion, I thought he won that fight. Obviously, the decision went to Tyson Fury because they got this massive fight with Usyk lined up. But in my opinion, Francis Ngannou managed to put a middle finger up against the boxing world. He put a middle finger up at Dana White and the UFC, and he's managed to put PFL over, because PFL was the one that gave him the deal that let that happen. So PFL is another person that's come into the market. Obviously, I'm going to go into the MMA side of things, but I'm just talking about boxing at this point in time. Anthony Joshua has been very active in this past year. Obviously, we saw him fight Franklin. We saw him fight knockout Hellenius. Although that was not a terrible performance, but it was a bit pedestrian. He managed to knock him out, and obviously we saw him fight Otto Wallin and knock him out and give a career best performance in a very, very long time. So he looks like he's firing on all cylinders again. Obviously, we saw Daniel Dubois knock out Jarrell Miller, which was a very big win for him. And obviously, we saw the Parker versus Wilder fight, and Parker exposed Wilder's deficiencies and put him uh, way down the line in terms of his supremacy in the heavyweight division. We obviously saw Bivol beat the brakes off Lyndon Arthur. Hopefully, Bivol could get into a fight with Artur Beterbiev, but the fact that he's been active is a very good thing. We saw Beterbiev fight Anthony Yard in London. That was a really good fight. That was a great fight. Obviously, Anthony Yard gave a very game effort. He eventually ended up getting stopped, but he didn't embarrass himself, and Beterbiev showed vulnerabilities. So that fight was incredible. In terms of the business side of boxing, obviously, sadly, Showtime has left boxing, as well as HBO. HBO left years ago. So this is a bit of a changing of the guard that's going on right now. The two biggest broadcasters that used to show big time boxing, HBO and Showtime, have left the sport. But the beautiful thing is, you got new broadcasters in town. You got DAZN. You've obviously got Amazon that's actually done a deal with Al Heyman's PBC group, and you've also got other people that are seeing that there's a bit of an entrance for them to get back into the sport. So obviously there's a bit of a power play going on now. There's a bit of a power vacuum with two of the biggest broadcasters out of the sport, with HBO and Showtime. Hopefully somebody can come in and become a big incumbent broadcaster in the sport, and obviously this is going to create more competition, which is good. The fact that Amazon's come back into the market is a good thing. You don't just want the zone monopolizing the market, because we just don't want that. You want there to be competition. The more competition there is, the better it is for the sport. So I'm looking forward to that. Another thing that's happened is the Saudi money has made a lot of good fights happen. We saw the Saudi card, Day of Reckoning. We saw that card, which was incredible. It's an incredible card, and it's got the heavyweight division moving forward again. Because for the longest time in 2023, the rest of the weight classes were moving forward. You saw the welterweight division moving forward. You saw obviously with Crawford and Spence fighting. You saw the lower weight classes with Inouye beating Fulton and beating Tapayas. You saw all of these other weight classes moving forward, but the heavyweight division for some reason was just stuck in mud. But now the Saudis have come in with the money, and hopefully we're going to see the undisputed fight in the heavyweight division. We saw the Day of Reckoning, which was incredible. We saw Wilder versus Parker. So with this money coming in from the Saudis, hopefully the big fights that we want to see, they're going to happen now. So boxing as a whole, I think it was a very positive year for boxing. We saw a lot of good fights. We saw a lot of great things happening. And it was very positive, in my opinion. For a long time, a lot of good fights have not happened, but since the Saudis have come in with their money, since everything that's been going down with boxing in general, it seems like it's been a very positive year. Like 2023 has been really positive for boxing. I think we saw several good super fights. Obviously, there's several fights that I've not even mentioned. Obviously, we've got other fighters like Shakur Stevenson. We've several good fighters that I've not even mentioned that have fought this year. But I've obviously just mentioned the main ones. Okay, so now going on to the MMA side of things. Obviously, I mentioned Francis Ngannou. With him putting a middle finger up at Dana White and signing with the PFL, it's allowed PFL to actually get one over the UFC, because they've managed to sign a top heavyweight who everyone now knows about in Francis Ngannou. And now, because of his free agency and the fact that he's got such a good deal, we got more opportunities for MMA fighters. The PFL has also taken over Bellator, and that's a big deal as well. And on top of that, the PFL has signed a deal with ESPN, so that they're direct competition to the UFC. So that's a big deal. The fact that the UFC has merged with the WWF, sorry, and now you've got TKO, which is this massive umbrella company which has the UFC and the WWE under WWF under one umbrella. You've got Dana White and Vince McMahon working together, and you obviously got the head of TKO who runs both of them, who is above both of them, having both of them under his umbrella. So that's a massive power play. On top of that, obviously, There's a massive lawsuit that's going on towards the UFC because of their anti-competitive practices. So that's another thing that's going on. The PFL is obviously competition, but you also got One Championship that's there. One Championship have established themselves in the US now. They're doing shows in the US, so that's another thing that's going on. Obviously, we know everything about the UFC. The UFC have been putting on shows with the likes of what is there? Israel Adesanya fighting Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira's managed to win another title in a separate weight class. You've got several fights going on. You've got Khamzat Chimaev who's fought Usman. You've got Shavkat who's beaten Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. You've got all these fights going on, and they're all happening under the UFC. Obviously, we saw Islam Makhachev beat Volkanovski twice. We saw several good fights happening in the UFC at this point in time. So, honest to God, both sports, both MMA and the UFC have not MMA, both MMA and boxing have had a breakthrough year in 2023. I mean, it was an incredible year for boxing. It was an incredible year for MMA and UFC in particular. I mean, this has been a breakthrough year, and I think this has been a very substantial year. You've had TV networks like Showtime leave the fray. You've got new TV networks or broadcasters coming in, like the likes of Amazon, the likes of DAZN. You've got all of this happening. You've got the mergers going on. So you've got the UFC merging with the WWF to make TKO. You've got all these great fights that have happened in boxing recently. All of this has happened within the past year. 1 year ago, you never thought that Francis Ngannou would deck the heavyweight champion in Tyson Fury on his ass, and everyone thinking that Francis Ngannou beat Tyson Fury. I mean, this has been an incredible year for boxing. Obviously, in terms of boxing, we saw we saw Crawford beat the brakes of Errol Spence and become double undisputed, the first double undisputed champion ever in the four belt era. And then within the same year, you saw Inouye do it literally a couple of days ago on Boxing Day when he beat Tapayas. He become double undisputed. So this has been like one of the best years that we've had, both in boxing history and MMA history. I think this is a breakthrough year. This is a changing of the guard. You've got old broadcasters disappearing, new broadcasters coming in. You've got that Saudi money coming in. Saudi's become a hotbed for boxing now. It's become like the next Vegas, where literally every couple of months there's a new great boxing card going on there. You got the Saudis putting money into the PFL, so that's competition against the UFC. You've got all of this that's happened in the past year, and obviously the Saudis are investing hundreds of millions into combat sports, opening gyms, starting all these fight franchises, literally investing money into MMA, investing money into boxing. Literally, the sport is on another level now in terms of its wave that's going on right now. And I'm all for it. And I'm looking forward to 2023. I can't wait to see what happens in 2023. This has been one of the most incredible years that I've personally witnessed happening. Obviously, like with the Saudi money, with new broadcasters, with mergers between the UFC and WWE, like this has been one of the most incredible years. All the countless great fights that we've seen, both in MMA and boxing, this has been an incredible year. So I'm looking forward to the next year. I can't wait to see what happens next. And yeah, I hope you lot can join me, and I hope 2023 has been an incredible year, both for boxing, both for MMA, and I'm looking forward to see what comes next. Tell me what you think below. Has this been an incredible year for boxing? I think this has been one of the best years that I've personally witnessed in boxing and MMA. The fact that they both happened simultaneously was incredible, because I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of boxing. I've been a long time fan of boxing. I'm a huge fan of MMA. The UFC, and I'm looking forward to see what happens next. There's a lot of things that I've not even mentioned. For example, Leon Edwards beating Colby Covington, Tom Aspinall, obviously like becoming I forgot the guy's name, the Russian guy that he just beat. And he won the interim heavyweight title, and hopefully he can get a shot against the winner of John Jones and Stipe. I can't wait to see what happens next. Obviously, there's been loads of breakthrough prospects. Obviously, the Sonny Edwards fight with Bam Bam Rodriguez. There's been several fights that I've completely forgotten off the top of my head as well. But this has been an incredible year for boxing, and I'm hoping that it continues. Tell me what you think below, and like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace.